Hello, everybody. I don't know whether we're okay to start, are we? Oh, good. We have so much room. We want to lie on these sofas. They're lovely, aren't they? Welcome, everybody. My name is Tommy Pearson, and hello, thank you. And I'm very much looking forward to hosting the World Soundtrack Awards tomorrow night. We're always so thrilled to be here in this beautiful city that always gives us such gorgeous weather. My trousers have never been this wet. Small insight, but what a shame we have so much rain. But always wonderful to be here, and always wonderful to be in amongst so many great people across the whole industry. Composers, of course, but everybody else from all corners of this industry. And this panel, of course, is concentrating on music supervisors, an absolutely key and fascinating role within the industry that I think often a lot of people have no idea about and maybe even don't know it exists. So we're here really to explore the role and the idea of a music supervisor, and we have a wonderful panel here. So I hope you'll welcome our guests. So we have Milena Fessmann, who is a music supervisor at CineSong. We have Tracy McKnight from BMI, and we have Munir Hathort, who's from Sonhouse, and we also have Rupert Hollier from Atlantic Screen Group. That's the official title, right? Yeah. But so everybody here, I think, does more than just being a music supervisor. There's a lot of strings to their bows. So really looking forward to getting stuck in. What we'll do is we'll talk, and then near the end we have the wonderful bouncy microphone thing. So if you do have some questions, I'll ask you, and you just put your hand up and wait for the microphone to come over to you, and we can see what we can do. Right. Let's get started. Now, I think probably the first thing we should do is establish what a music supervisor actually does. Maybe each of you could tell me how you see the role, and also introduce to us some of the projects that we will know that you've worked on. Let's start with you, Rupert.
I always love sitting next to the moderator. Thank you very much, Tommy. So my name is Rupert Hollier. I run a company called the Atlantic Screen Group and Red 5, which is a music supervision company. We work exclusively on film and television. So unlike maybe some of our esteemed guests, we don't do video games or advertising. We're strictly on film and TV. In terms of what I've worked on a film you might know called Living, which was out last year with Bill Nighy. We work on a lot of the new Guy Ritchie movies that are coming out. We do a lot of stuff with Apple and Netflix and the streamers. On the TV side, we did things like The Tourist that was out last year. So, a few things, and we have I think a good range of experience in those particular genres. What do I think a music supervisor is? I know we've got an hour and everyone's got a lot of experience to bring to the table. I mean, it's an unending question. For me, I don't know about you guys, whenever I'm asked about being a music supervisor, the first thing that I'm often confronted with is people saying, oh, I've got really good taste in music. I have a really bad taste in music, but a lot of people have a great taste in music, right? Especially directors. And they're like, well, we're going to send our playlist off and you just put the music in, right? That's what happens. Well, for me, no. I don't often get to make a decision of what music is in the film. I'm there to serve the director is how I see it. And it's like any head of department. And I'm very interested to hear everyone else's opinion on this, but in my world, I'm there to service the director. We could be head of makeup, we could be head of lighting. Everyone is important as a head of department on a film. But as a music soup, really we're there to try and do two things for me, which is to hold the producer at bay slightly because they are in control of the money, which we will get into. And then the director who has the best music taste in the world and has no concept that money might play a part. So there's a whole thing there which I think we might get into.
And one of the reasons why this panel is titled, has the word gatekeeper in it, which we will explore. Milena, how about you? How do you see your role? And tell us a couple of things that you've been working on.
Okay, so I have a company in Berlin, so I'm from Germany. It's called CineSong, and it's also mainly in TV and films, so no advertisement, no commercials. And I totally agree what you said. When I started, I had the idea that I'm drinking wine with directors, listening to great music, and that's it. And to be honest, in the last 25 years, I think I had 3 wines with directors, and the rest of the time, of course, it's a creative process, but it's also making things happen. and not all directors have good taste. But I would never say that aloud. But so, yeah, you're
You just did, by the way.
Yeah, I know. But you're in the middle between the directors, the composers, the musicians, and of course you're looking at the budget. So it's good when you start at the very beginning, reading the script, and then going into and saying, okay, you want to shoot something, but please make sure that you have the rights before and not afterwards, and stuff like that. So, and as coming to projects, I did some things for Netflix, like The Empress, Paradise. I did Wim Wenders. They're both shown here, Perfect Days and Anselm, the one about Anselm Kiefer. I'm doing Pablo Larraín's Maria thing, which is in shooting at the moment with Angelina Jolie playing Maria Callas, which is it's a very interesting project, but it's really difficult. And yeah, a lot of German things as well. So.
Tracy, you're our American on the panel, and you're
thank you.
Officially welcome, and you're officially BMI. I mentioned earlier that you've all done lots of different kinds of roles in your careers, but I'm interested to know from you how you, because with 3 Europeans and an American, whether there's a big difference in the idea of a music supervisor in America compared to over here.
Well, I'm at BMI now, running the film, TV, and visual media department, but for 20 years I was an independent music supervisor, taking a quick break there to run the film music department at Lionsgate. So I see the role very similarly. I look at myself as when I'm music supervising as the ambassador of the film. So I know that I have a budget and I have a creative directive, and my job there primarily is to help be a storyteller. And I learned early on not to be what I called a dream squasher, where just when I thought that certain things, we have high expectations and we all have a budget. But to be able to go into a film, and I feel like I'm the ambassador for art. So I'm going in as the person who's working on that film to explain why someone else, whether it's an artist, whether it's a composer, why they should join our team. And then why they should join our team for the finances that we have. So some films that I worked on both the Hunger Games, the first 2. I did Free Solo, which won the Academy Award for Best Documentary. I recently have the Donna Summer documentary out. But I think it's a navigation, and what Rupert said, which is true, you're the head of the department. So it means that all arrows are flying at you when it comes to music, and you have to be able to find solutions. And that's the way I see it.
Thank you. And Munir, you're our most local music supervisor here.
I live just here.
Just around the corner.
meters of-
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Tell us how you see the role.
Yeah. So, like you said, we are gatekeepers, and actually, we are supervising the music. I think it's there are 2 parts: there are existing music and composers. I drank a lot of wines with directors. So, and actually, I make playlists. I also edit the music on the films, and to check with the directors if they like it or not. So and also make mood boards to look for composers. So that's a bit how I work. And I did a lot of Belgian projects actually. One just came out 1985, where I did a lot of music from the 80s. So it was really nice to work on with not a big budget. But it was nice to really go in the music in the 80s and look for songs that are not that known and are payable. So and also worked on a series called Roomies, where we worked with several artists on the end credits. So they all made a song especially for the series. We won an award here in Belgium, the Ensor, so for that series. And also did the clearances for a big movie now. I see also, I think the composer is here. In the Land of the Saints and Sinners with, I forgot his name, damn. How is he called again? Liam Neeson, thank you. So far. I did
and he's here tonight.
Yeah, and I forgot his name. Sorry.
Okay, I want to get an idea of how the role might have changed. You talked about what the role is, but has it changed much, Rupert, in the time that you've been doing it? Because technology goes so fast, just with what the composer is using, of course, but technology works just as fast perhaps even faster in the delivery of music. And streaming is, of course, so much a part of it now. There's all that going on in the access that people have to music, and how quickly they can access music, and how quickly directors can access music and think they might be allowed it, and all that. So this is happening apace. Is that really the main change that's been happening in the last few years or so?
Yeah, I would think so. And actually, the last point you make about directors having access to music is a really dangerous thing. It's terrible.
Yes.
It's terrifying.
Because it used to be that they might come across something on a flight or something miles away. Yeah. They hear a piece of music and think, oh, I like that. I'll try and find something of that. Or maybe it was a vinyl record.
Maybe it was a YouTube video that they put in the film.
Right. But that, I mean, even that's more recent. But I mean, going way back, the access to music from around the world was so much harder because you had to really seek it out. Now you don't need to put any effort into it at all. So in a way, that puts a lot of pressure on you guys.
I think it does, and I'm sure this will resonate with you guys. When it's unregulated, it's a problem because, for example, when I'm sure all you guys know, like when you're music supervising, obviously we are gatekeepers to a degree. We'll get into that debate, and we have to deliver what the director wants. There is a relationship which I find very strong, which is the director and the editor. So in the edit, dangerous things happened. It's a Wild West, unregulated, horrible room that you should never go into. It's terrible. And the editor will just, like, because they're techsperts and I'm not, I can barely use email because I'm from the old days, you know, like they will rip stuff off YouTube, as Tracy's saying, and they will just put it on there. And again, it's unqualified, and directors aren't there to understand the process or the technique, so it does become quite hard. In terms of how it's changed, 20 years ago, when I was a rights holder, I would go and deliver hard drives into edit suites to like National Geographic or for the documentaries. Obviously, streaming has changed everything. AI is another debate. There's probably another cinema with that panel going on. I mean, it's very, very difficult. The pure fact is that regardless of how music is sourced, you know, like rights holders send us music all the time because rightfully they want their music placed. Yeah. But ultimately, how that is put into a film has a process that doesn't change. It has to be paid for because music is worth something. It has to be respected because music should be respected. And the process that we have to go through to do that is both creative and technical to a degree, but the process of delivery, has it changed? I mean, ultimately, you still have to go through the end gate to get music into a film, so it's difficult.
But ultimately, Milena, we are at a position now where a lot of people, including some of those in the industry, off the back of what Rupert was saying, don't value music in that way. They don't see music as being a value in monetary terms because you can access it for free, therefore it must be free. That's a huge challenge for you guys.
Yeah, I think it is. Because as you said, music is out there everywhere and it's easy to approach, and it's just something different if you want to put it to pictures because you have to clear the rights. And even if it's there out in many versions, but if you don't get the people who own that, you can't use it. And as you said, I wouldn't say it's a dangerous room, but it's a tricky room because you can imagine that people are sitting in the editing room, there's no one coming in, they're in their space and they're trying music. Because most of the films and TV series, you need music, you need temp tracks, although everyone hates them, but you need music to make it sort of like happen. And everyone says, yeah, it's not the final one. So yeah, we will replace it. But imagine that you sit in a dark room for 6 weeks, seeing a scene and there's music on it. And everyone is really into that song, although everyone knows that it's not affordable or no one knows where the rights are. And then it's our bad job to replace it with something for 2,000 euros. And everyone is just, it's not Marvin Gaye. Yeah, I know. But so that's a tricky thing. But on the other hand, it makes it easier for us as well because music is really accessible. You don't have to rip vinyl into sort of like an MP3 and send it to someone. And yeah, so I think it's both sides.
I was watching a TV show just a couple of days ago, Great British Bake Off, which is a very popular show in the UK, and it has a spin-off show where they have the public come and bring their own cakes, and someone brought a cake in the shape of an oboe, but because they were an oboist and they brought their own oboe, and the presenter said, "Oh, go on, play us a tune." So she picked up her oboe and then he said, please don't play something we may have to pay for. And it was a funny joke, but also, of course, true, because they do then have to pay for the tune, whatever it might be. And I think it makes the audience go, whoa, really? You have to pay for it? Even if you just play it as a tune on an oboe? These are the processes you have to think about the whole time.
Can I add something? I think because you mentioned it, because I think there's also a difference, and you have it in the UK as well. We have a blanket license for normal TV with the GEMA. So when you have a normal TV program, you can use whatever you want. So people are used to just use from the Beatles to the Stones, everything in their show. And then when you do a movie or a TV series for Netflix, this part is over. So it's a learning process not to be able to have like 82 music cues. And you're just like, no, that's not going to happen. No one can afford that. So that's also something.
Tracy, Rupert alluded to this, but one of the key relationships has to be with the people who supply music to you, or library music,
That's right.
as is so often called. And of course, a lot of composers are writing library music now in the hope that at some point that music will find its way to people like you. So talk me through the key relationships there and how they actually work with you.
For the clearance part?
Yeah.
Well, one, I want to just say
Well,
something
and the creative side, because obviously you're talking about creatives
Right.
as well.
Creatives as well. But I want to say, like, when I signed up for music supervision, like, I love the room. I was like, I really do. Like, I found every project, every single film that you walk into is a whole new experience, and it's going to have a beginning, middle, and an end. And everyone's different. It's kind of like dating, right? So sometimes you go in and you're like, this is amazing. I can't wait to work with you. And then you get in the relationship and you're like, and then this is going to be over, or it's going to continue and you're going to date over and over and over again. Whatever. But the relationships, it's a key point. And I did and have made part of my journey when I was saying about I learned early on in my career when someone put a very expensive song. I worked on a lot of independent films. I come from that community in New York City. And I said no. I'm like, oh, you're never going to get this. You're never going to get that. And then I did. And so, one, it sets the expectations for those people when you work with them again. But two, it never underestimate the value of art. That artists will come to the party if it's something that they believe in, which leads me to licensors. So when I talked earlier about being the ambassador, I'm the front line. I'm the person that's going to be asking for those rights, and how I present it, what I'm saying, how I put the care into it, depending. And it's certainly like when I worked on a film called Adventureland, Greg Mottola, who also did Superbad, had a list, and he's like, Tracy walks on broken glass for these. So that was the must get small budget movie, and we cleared tops by the Rolling Stones. And I had to send like Mick Jagger copies of the scene, which we've all done, like to Mystique or wherever he was, and he kept losing it, and we had to do it again. But he cleared it. So those relationships are pivotal, and they create over time. But it's also not just the person who are pitching to you creatively, but it's also the people at all of the labels, all the publishers, managers that are actually doing the deals. So it's twofold, and they're key to your success. They really are, and we all have to deal with them. And also sometimes it's frustrating when you send them a note and say, I want to do this, and 2 seconds later you get a note back saying you don't have enough money. And you're like, could you at least process it for maybe like 20 minutes before you said no?
You
But it's
mentioned
important.
Mick Jagger. I guess he must be one of the more sympathetic people in this, because he's a film producer himself. He understands the industry. He's been in it an awful long time, as we know. But there must be others that it's like coming up against a brick wall, and you can't really understand why they won't give you the license to use their music. You must have had those experiences.
I have this story. I wanted to clear two pretty good stories, but one, I wanted to clear My Sharona, and Zach Braff needed to whistle it for 10 seconds in an indie movie I was doing, and I was still like, I haven't been music supervising that long. Anyway, we're giving him $10,000. $1,000 a second sounds like a pretty good deal, right? And I was denied, and then went back again. I was denied. So even when you get denial, I'm sure we've all gone back. Is there anything we can do? What is it? But the writer of the song actually called me, and we had this. Like, I was at a gas station in New York, I'll never forget it. And I was I was just kind of speaking my truth, which in turn, I don't know if I would say it again, but he was so impressed with my sass of like, he still denied me, by the way. I did not get the song. But he did say, this is my big copyright. It's my Sharona. And I totally understand that. And it generates a lot of income and people use it. It's very successful. And I was like, well, but what if this is the last time? Like, what if it never gets licensed again? Which I don't know. It was like I was doing when I was pumping my gas. But the other one was when I did I did a documentary about the first planned suburb in America, which is Levittown, Long Island. And we had someone who was singing karaoke, and he's a big part of the journey. Eddie Money is in that documentary as well. And someone sang Purple Rain. And that was the time when Prince was a symbol. So it was very hard to like write a note, dear symbol, and what's going on. And there was like a whole strategy of, there was apparently like they looked at things like only like once every 3 weeks, which is not great for music supervision. And we were denied. Wow. So it's really heartbreaking that sometimes you have those, like, they're pivotal moments in a film, especially a documentary. And you just have to move forward for whatever reasons. So, but it's hard. But you have to get in there and fight the good fight.
Do you remember when My Sharona was on the playlist of George W. Bush when he was president?
Oh, no, was he?
And he didn't realise it's about underage sex. It's just one of those lovely moments.
Is that true?
Yeah. Munir,
wow.
Talk to me about your relationship with the composers. And so we talked about licensees and library music a bit. What about with the composers themselves? How does that work with you?
Yeah, I worked with several composers already, so and also a lot of new ones too that never did it before. I think there are a lot of composers. I get a lot of emails. I think everybody here get a lot of emails with music. I love when somebody sends me SoundCloud and not just a WeTransfer, just an ID, because I can always go back to the music you've sent. And yeah, I think there are a lot of composers, but for me, it's the style that gets me the idea of who to choose, or together with the director, because a lot of composers say I can do everything. That's something that I don't believe in. Actually, I think it's good to have like a kind of a style that you're very good at, and try to get movies that use that kind of style of music, like classical score. For example, I did a series for Adil and Bilal, directors from Bad Boys, but they did a series here in Belgium called Grond. And we needed hip-hop music mixed with Arabic tunes. And yeah, for me, not everybody can do that. So we went looking and found two composers, actually one producer, DJ, and one artist that actually is also in the radio charts that never did that before. And they worked together, and it was really amazing what they made. So for me, it's really a style that you have to have. And that's what I like. Like, for example, I'm making a mood board for a series or a movie. And then I'm like, okay, I need some classical style or just electronic. Then I can say, these guys are very good at electronic scores, and these guys are better at that. If I need jazz, or just I need somebody to compose a song, like an EDM song, I actually call an EDM producer, because I say, he does it every day. For him, it's normal. So just give me, that's a bit how I work.
I mean, what you're saying effectively is that it's always worth sending stuff in. Because I guess with it can probably feel quite frustrating for composers, young and old, if they just keep sending it and nothing ever quite comes of it. But what you're saying is you never know when what you do is exactly the right fit for a project, because you don't know what that project is.
Yes.
And they find you through you guys.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So never give up, basically.
I don't, I think so. And try to, if you don't do like shorts, movies, I think that's also a good thing to do. Because directors there are then maybe just beginning, and you can work really close together. And they are not like I just want this, I just want this. I think it's more like working together then.
Yeah.
And then if you do like a good short, it's something that we see, I think. And if we like it, you are top of mind.
It's a big responsibility, actually, isn't it? And I guess you feel that, particularly with younger composers, that you're almost like their guardians, aren't you? You are like their their parents almost sometimes, in the way in which you actually have the way to guide them through a process that can be incredibly difficult and complicated. I mean, it's hard enough to write original music, but then there's the whole business side of it that I think a lot of composers either haven't thought about or don't particularly want to think about. Licensing is a perfect example of that, isn't it? I think most people, when you start composing, you're not thinking about, well, maybe they are now, of course, but certainly in my day, you weren't thinking about licensing. You're just trying to get the notes on the page and get that done and then wonder what happened after that. But there's so much responsibility to have, especially with ones that are starting out.
I think so. One thing I would say, and we've all alluded to this, that it's no one's responsibility outside of what we do to understand the process. So like the directors or the composers, as you're saying, like they might not want to get into that. I think there is a level of understanding. Part of our role is to understand what our end users' understanding of the process is and therefore guide them. I mean, something like you say, we will wear a lot of hats. One thing I will never do is be a composer agent, but I've been asked, you know, like, because again, I would imagine in the most respectful, deeply loving way, naively, they think that I'm a gatekeeper to getting their music on, but I don't make any choices. These guys might, I don't make any choices. So I think, yeah, there is an element of guiding and hand-holding and trying to be sympathetic to someone's opinion about how this works. But I think, you know, I've had people call me like aggressively or email me like, why didn't you respond to my email? Why haven't you got me a movie? Right. I'm like, well, like, I don't even quite, you know, you have to really breathe in and think.
That's not going to work.
Yeah, and I'm an emotional person. I like people, weirdly. Yeah. So like, I kind of want to be kind to them, but like, it's not my choice. And I've tried, and it is what it is. At least from my point of view, I can only champion people so much. And I think then there's a moment of overkill where to the director, you know.
Right.
There is a guardianship there, but I think it's about being empathetic.
Milena, I think everybody seems to want to be a composer in media right now. But actually there are, as we're demonstrating, a lot of jobs out there for interesting, in music, I mean, I don't mean necessarily they're all available jobs, but I mean, there are lots of different aspects to this industry. It doesn't just have to be about writing music. And I wonder whether there are composers who might find that actually their gift is in this area more. How might they find that out, I wonder? I mean, how do you wake up one morning and say, actually, maybe I should be a music supervisor? What makes a good music supervisor? What are the skills that one might have? You don't even realize that they might be the best skills for being a supervisor.
Difficult question. I think not being a composer is a good start because it sounds really stupid, but if I want to bring in my skills as a composer close to a composer attached, then it might be a bit tricky. And I agree. I'm sort of like I'm trying to help everyone to come to a good result in the end. And so I'm moderating when it's difficult between composers and directors or composers and producers if needed. Sometimes it all goes very smoothly and my job is just to fill out the cue sheet at the end. So, and I think the responsibility is, as you said with young composers, is not only to help them through the process, but also maybe to guide them. Okay, do you really want to do that? Do you want to have a career in that? Maybe you should talk to a lawyer, get you a lawyer, get you an agent, get you help from the beginning that you do not do all the mistakes one could do and then learn. And I would also always say, do different things because you don't know. Do a commercial and maybe it's not your world, but then you know it afterwards, but go and try. And I think that's the best advice I can give. And of course, we are all getting a lot of emails. And of course, I can't answer them all. I'm trying and I can't listen to all the music, of course, because I wouldn't do anything else. But I'm trying to be nice and say, okay, I keep it in my head and I'm actually trying to keep it in my head, not everything. But and as you said, once in a while, you're just checking something and an email pops up and you're just like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. And you don't know before. It can happen. And it happened to me a lot of times that I just grabbed an email saying, wow, this is what I wanted.
But that can break a career.
Yeah.
If it's placed in a big movie, boom, all of a sudden you're on the sheet, you get paid, and then someone wants to know what's that. I think it didn't quite happen like this with Max Richter, for example, who's a guest here a couple of years ago. I talked to him about this, that a film used his music that was written for something else entirely, but they heard it and they thought, I love this. I want this in my movie. And that then led to other people saying, I want that in my movie, or I want the person who was responsible for that to be in my movie, and so on and so on. It becomes a big major name.
That happened with Olafur Arnalds as well,
Right.
on Broadchurch. Because they took
yes.
his whole record and put it underneath Broadchurch, and that sort of made him
Right.
a composer. He was one before, but he made this made it known for the world.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was talking about the responsibility. It can be literally that, a needle drop, and it throws it all open for that one composer.
And it's there. And sorry to interject, but I think on that, I did a temp score a couple of years ago, which, when you do a temp score, often you have to build a score, right, for where the composer is then going to compose over. And there was a lot of Max Richter in there. And eventually, 2 of the pieces and Nils Fram stayed in there, because even the composer was brilliant, but the director couldn't get their head around that.
Yes.
So it's an interesting place.
And then Michael Caine would always talk about this. He'd find out that producers and directors have conversations about trying to find an actor just like Michael Caine. And eventually they can't find one. And what they do is they end up asking Michael Caine. And that surely happens a lot in music, right?
Well, I do think that we do get emails, and I'm always from the school of some of them are good emails, some of them are not so great emails. Like some people, we all had to hustle for our gigs. We were all independents. So we were in the same process that a composer would be in, which is, how do you present yourself? How are you thinking it through? Did you do your research? What has Rupert worked on? Have you connected? Composers have to take those skills, and then they also have to bring them into a room. So yes, you need to be creative, but you also need to be business savvy, reading rooms, language of a direct, body language. You'll see that we put a lot of pressure on composers now because we do something called package deals. And I'm sure you've done them as well. But when you go in now, you not only have to be creative, say you get X amount of dollars for a package deal, and you have to meet all the expectations creatively. Then you have to hire the musicians, you got to pay for the studio, and you have to pay yourself. So it's that one unique job on a film where all of the onus is put on that composer to be the reader of the room, to have the most excellent result, but also to take care of the business side. So we're seeing more and more that you have to have business savvy along with your creativity. And it's a very important part to learn as you navigate the composer world, especially in our world in the US. I don't know if it's the same.
I think this is something that's changed a lot over the years, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Clearly, younger composers are, because of their age, are far more likely to be familiar with cameras, phones. Everything's
Right.
so much more natural for them. I mean, when I was doing composition at the Royal Academy of Music in the late 80s, the whole department was famous for being have no social skills whatsoever. And I was thought of as weird because I used to talk to other people.
It's so true.
They like to, who's that guy in the corner on his own? Oh, that's a composer.
That's right.
Never talk to anybody. And now it's the opposite. They're in everybody's faces the whole time. I'd like to do this. I want to perform this. I need to do, and they do seem more savvy now with the business end of it a little bit. Not the minutiae that we were mentioning, but just, like you're saying, just the front facing aspect of it.
I think so. And also
Because you've got to promote yourself.
You
right?
do have to promote yourself. It's I looked at it for myself. I signed up for the hustle. So it was, so once I was like, oh, this is what it's going to be, then I knew that I want to be a music supervisor, and how was I going to make that happen? And it was going to film festivals, riding the bus. I didn't have any money. I was meeting people. Like I was, I wanted to be in charge of what was going on, and you get a lucky break. We all got a lucky break at one point. We got our first gig, and then you have to walk through that door and give 100% and make sure that it's great. And that's the same thing for a composer. We don't know where we're going to get our lucky breaks. It could be, it's so random. And what's so beautiful about our business, there's no rules. Like, we can give you insight and advice, but it's this beautiful journey of like it could happen for me way different than it happened for Milena, that it happened for Rupert. It's the way it is. I love it.
I still want to try and get an understanding of what the qualifications are for being a music supervisor. There's no A-level music supervision. Tell me, what do you need the world's music in your head? Is that, or if you do have that, is that helpful for when you do temp tracks, for example?
Yeah, I think it's good to know a lot of music. But I think for a music supervisor, it's good to be at one side creative and know what music is about. I always was a DJ, so actually I always say music supervision is like a bit DJing for a movie or for a series. And then the second part is the production thing, like contracts and everything, the things I hate, but okay, we still have to do it. But yeah, I think the creative, like for example, a project for me, it's always, I know a lot of music, I think, but I don't know everything. Somebody at the label told me that every day there are like 50,000 songs on Spotify extra every day. So we can't keep up. But I think the project, you start reading the script and then you go into a kind of vibe of style of music, and then you just go look and search for music that is good and that you like and that fits the project. And I think, yeah, the streamers are very good for that. I'm very happy that they exist, because I don't know how you did it in the past with CDs and everything, but I think that was much more difficult. Maybe go to the library, or I don't know.
Remember those?
Shall I tell you a terrible secret about this?
We love terrible secrets.
Terrible secret. See, that's the thing. That's the dream, isn't it? Like you're saying, I was a DJ as well. It's terrible, but like you have this encyclopedic knowledge of some stuff. We always can learn. You could supervise a movie having no knowledge of music. You could perform the role on certain films when the director is like, right, I want this. Yeah. You become a licensing monkey, effectively. You have to do it. You could get by on some projects with knowing nothing about music. Just have a spreadsheet. It's not ideal and it's rubbish and it's horrible and I hate that, but you could. But on the flip side, when you have these beautiful projects that are uber creative and you have a collaborative director that is kind of saying, look, I need some of your love here. I need to understand what you think about music. And that's part of the skill set, right? It's like wondering what the director wants. Like, do they want us just to perform a function for them, or do they want us to creatively get involved? I mean, it's like, honestly, what I see is how long is a piece of string? Creatively, it could be all or nothing, So that's my dirty secret. So there you go.
You mentioned Guy Ritchie very early on. He seems to me a director who often just forms his scenes around music and cuts them to music quite often in really quite stark ways and really rather exciting ways. Does that make it more or difficult or easier to deal with? Because he clearly has something in his head for that scene.
Yeah.
So how does it work?
Well, one thing I will say is that he, like a lot of things, he knows what he likes. So he will make a lot of sounds.
Right.
Like this. I want it more like that.
Yeah.
And there's a Tarantino aspect to it where he's like, okay, I want it to sound like what he likes is really cool, but he doesn't know how to articulate it. Right. So I think that's the thing, and that's another part of the skill set, is trying to translate what these people want. What is the language here? Because like, honestly, when he listens to something, I've found that like it's amazing. I'm like, wow, the instinct there of what that music is going to be is brilliant. I nearly swore, like brilliant. But he can't articulate it. So you have to spend a lot of time extrapolating. Like, what do you mean by tss, 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 tss? Like, I kind of think I get it because I know what the film is. Yeah, it was ever thus.
I love discovering in scenes in movies where they're in a disco or something like that, and they're all dancing to this song you're hearing, but actually they weren't dancing to that song. The song they were dancing to wasn't cleared, so they had to put another song in it. And then people say, "No, they don't really look like they're dancing to that song," and they're not, are they? And this is what happens. And there was, what's the movie with Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie that John Powell did, where there's a great dance scene in that where they were dancing to one thing, they didn't clear it, so John wrote a cue to the dancing, which is an amazing. What was it called?
Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Yeah. I thought that was an extraordinary thing. He's actually sort of back composing, as it were, hitting all the marks in the dance and making it look as though it was meant to be that way the whole time, which is incredible. I mean, he's a great talent, but this happens a lot, right? That kind of thing.
That's a music supervisor's worst nightmare when somebody shoots to a song that's not cleared. It hasn't happened all that often to me, but for the composer, it's amazing. You know, you get to use a different skill set.
Yeah, some of them do. I mean, some of them can't do that, I guess. You need John Powell's skill set to do it, but you were going to say.
Yeah.
I think for club scenes, certainly, yeah. For me, I read the script actually, and then I say if it's important or not. Like, I really did it a lot. Like, I say, just use any song you want. Don't let them sing. That's the first thing. Right. Don't sing. And then I can change it with or some music that is cheaper or with library. I did it a lot, actually. And I try to get really the same vibe. I really look at the dance moves and try to have like the song for the dance move.
But
And I
that
think it's
must be
possible.
fun,
If
by
they
the
do-
way.
Yeah, it's really fun.
That must be fun.
You can
Yes.
also do coverage too. Like you make sure when you call the producer, if you've got a rogue, like I worked with someone recently who like all of a sudden you get the call from Sense, like we've shot these 3 other songs. And you're like, well, I hope you did it without any music too. Or most producers will make sure that happens, which is important.
Yeah. Right. Before I see if we've got some questions, I want to ask about the future. AI is something that's on everybody's lips right now. A lot of composers feeling that it's a threat to them, and particularly with the way in which it's compiled out of everybody's output, and then you say, I want a Jerry Goldsmith sounding score, and there it is. Although there are plenty of composers doing that anyway. But AI is a threat if you look at it in a particular way. How do you see it, and how do you see the future of your role developing, Rupert?
2 things really quickly. So there is a plethora of music management platforms that we all know about that are trying to make our lives easier as music supervisors. So there's the very basic micro tech thing going on with that to manage our systems. In terms of AI scores, you know what, I was on a panel about 5 years ago, pre-COVID, about someone saying, can we make AI scores? And it was all a bit kind of odd. I personally, vinyl has come back because people want to touch and feel and read and smell things. I don't think you're going to get to a point unless you are, you know, obviously producers want to save money. But
I was going to say, we're not talking about people. We're talking about producers.
We're talking about producers.
And directors.
They're not people.
No.
Producers have no soul. Well, some of them do. But I think the AI question, the AI question is interesting, but I don't really feel there's ever going to be a point where someone is going to want a computerized score, unless it's to save money or it's desperation. I don't know. Like you want a human touch to.
But
I think it's going to affect more like lower budget films,
Right.
where it's not. I don't think it's going to hit studio films. I don't think that's where it's going. But I think if you're on an indie film and they're struggling, because remember, music is usually like the lowest on the totem pole. Sometimes I hate to say that, but it's true, because they're like, well, we could get something for free, or my son can do it, or my cousin can do it, or I have a friend who's got a band, or whatever. We've all heard it. But when you start to look at that, I think the independent films that are working on those small budgets you have a producer that says, we'll go and put it into AI and the whole thing will be AI. Or there's some sites now that say free music, whatever, free royaltyfree.com, whatever it is. I've never used it. But I think that is going to have an impact or on a short film when people are really don't have money.
because we're already, I mean, AI has been around for a while in certain places, right? And what AI essentially drives playback, doesn't it, with samples and things, makes everything sound like it's live. That's been a problem for a while, hasn't it? With you know, if a producer thinks, I don't want to pay for a 90-piece orchestra if it sounds like that already, and I like that more than I like the live version, AI is already having an effect in that area, isn't it? Milena?
Yes, totally. But I think I would agree. At the end, you want to have the people, and I think it's about team building, because there's nothing better than having great people together in a room and deciding, having a script and deciding, okay, how are we going to make this alive with the best team we can get. And I think maybe there are projects where you actually want a computer score because you think it's kind of it fits to the story or something. It could be interesting as well. If you have an AI movie, I would go for and say, okay, let's try and see what the machine can do and make it sort of like a promotion tool. But at the end, it's always good to talk to real people, because you want their energy in that. But I think there will be certain parts like documentaries on television or something like that where you actually have someone playing some synthesizer vibes, and I think in the future they will be replaced.
I agree. And also what Rupert said, but also you cannot replace a live guitar, the nuance of somebody sitting in front of a picture. And it's not just like drive up and get your here's your $5, here's your music. It's a beautiful skill set that composers bring to a film. They're the heart and soul of a film. We don't see films without music. And to just give that to a computer, you're never going to replace that interaction. The interaction between, and Rupert said it earlier, between the director and a composer is like sacred. Like they go in and like that's how the sound that you're going to hear when you go to a theater and experience it. And computers are just not going to replace that. But I think finances and smaller films and commercials and things like that are going to be impacted.
It'll be fascinating to see what happens. Should we see if there's anybody got a question? If you have, please put your hand up and then wait for the microphone to come to you. We have bright lights, so it's difficult. But yeah, here we go. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is David, and I'm a composer. And you were talking about this tricky place, the editor room at first. I found it very interesting. I myself had to rebuild some Burt Bacharach tracks like 10 times or 12 in my career. And don't you think the editors should be educated somehow to understand that a track is not only a track, it's a web of cultural and sensitive references. That's what a track is, a known track. I mean, a track of the Rolling Stone or Edith Piaf or whatever. Yeah. But we are creative. They are creative people. We have to create new references. But they have to really understand that. And it's a tricky place, but as a composer, it's a hell work.
Rupert, directors need to be educated. Your thoughts?
Directors and editors.
Editors, yeah. So I said it was a dangerous place. I think Milena really, actually, you were right. It's a tricky place, maybe not a dangerous place. But I get your point. Should they be educated? I don't think it's any of our jobs to educate someone else on the head of department stuff. I mean, that is why we exist. Keeps us in a job. If I have to stop explaining it to people, then I might be out of the room. I think, but just to your point, I mean, yeah, I think, but some editors do, and you must have worked with them. Some editors will understand the cultural references. They will understand what music is valued as, and they might understand the financial process and the licensing process. But you can only educate them so much. If they don't. I mean, should they be? Yeah, but I don't think we can manifest that.
I totally agree with you. Temp tracks, and that could be a really nightmare for composers because they have to do Hans Zimmer or whatever again and again and again. But I think the problem is it's not only the editor and the director, but if you send out a rough cut to someone and there's no music on there, and you send it out to many people, to the producers, to the TV station, whoever is involved, and they want music in there. And most of the times composers come in very late, so there is nothing. So they have to do something, because otherwise the commissioning editor from the TV station would say, "What is this?" So that's why it's a kind of a tricky thing. That's why I said tricky. But I think the best thing would be to bring in composers pretty early, so that even if they have something they never used for another project, they can bring it in, and the editing room can work with these pieces, and it's at least your music and not Hans Zimmer or Olafur.
Yeah. I think that's the trick, to really make music already in front before they start editing, and then send it to them. Just, you can use these songs by me, please use them. I think that I do it also for existing music. I send already like some folders with music in, and I say this music I think it's payable with the budget that we have. But I just wanted to also come back about the budget. I think the first big problem is producers. They sometimes the music budget is 1% or less, but it's it makes or breaks sometimes a movie. Maybe they can take it up to 3, 4, 5%. That would be nice. I think that's something that has to change.
I want to try and get a couple of other questions in, if we can, before we. Yeah, over here, please. Wait. Hiya. Wait for the catch Bob box microphone.
Hello. So one
Say
thing.
who you are and what you do.
So I'm Adi Esker. I'm a composer. I'm very interested about how, in your job as a music supervisor, how often do you speak to music lawyers and things about that when it comes to a composer writing a cue and perhaps they've used something. So basically I did a job where I specifically wanted to use a melodic line from a piece of music that was in the show. We'd all talked with the director and everything, so it was a conversation we were having, and they basically talked to the lawyers and stuff about it, and basically spoke to the band, and it all got licensed, and it was all fine. But it's also very interesting about this conversation about temp and how many times composers might write something that edges on being quite similar to something else. What have your experiences been working with composers and having to have those discussions about licensing potential things because of those complications?
Tracy, you want to take that on?
I mean, I think that's all part of the job. Like if somebody wants to use a pre-existing piece of music and then put it into a piece of score, we do. I mean, I speak to music lawyers all the time to make sure those rights are cleared, but it's the same clearance process, and then you have to tell people exactly how you're using it. And sometimes, say it's a big band, you'll have to get an approval. So you can't just take someone's music without having some kind of final, want some final say. So it's tricky though. It's a tricky thing to do. Also, like when we put original songs in films, like you'll hear a lot of that as we come into award season. Somebody writes an original song, then they take the chorus or the melody and they're like, we're going to weave it into the score. So when the song plays at the end of the movie, it's going to have a big payoff. Most people will not catch that, by the way, but it's something that comes up all the time. And then the composer has to take that piece of music and weave it in. And then that also turns into copyright splits and the other things that need to happen. Who gets which portion of the copyright, which is where the lawyers come in. And it becomes fun.
Lawyers and fun in the same sentence. Did we get that?
Yeah.
Yeah, down in front. Go ahead.
It's hello, my name's Grant. I'm a kind of licensing consultant, ex-Disney and Spotify. It's kind of following on from that point, actually. Have you guys noticed an increasing request for buying out residual rights, particularly for bespoke pieces, or is that being kind of over-reported? I know that's not prominent or relevant in licensing commercial works, but in terms of commissioning works, I suppose there are a lot of composers in the audience now. So if they were approached and said, we can get you this gig, but you're going to have to sign your rights over, what is that something that's prominent, and what are your opinions on that?
Grant?
Sorry.
Fun fact, in a movie, the composers don't own the rights as a default setting. They own the writer's share. They don't own their publishing on a film. The production owns that. And that's why there is existing score funding deals, like, with all the companies out there that do that. So there is that. There's also a distribution clause. So most distributors now want to buy out everything if they can. They'll buy out mech rights. I mean, it's a whole other thing. It's a bit of a crapshoot with it. But yeah, ultimately, all productions, including some of our favorite streamers, will want to own as much as they can. And I think technically it's coming to a point where they will try, and that's another part of our job, is to fight back on behalf of the licensees or the artists. And then we end up getting into a crapshoot about almost being legal and paralegal, and we're not. None of us were. I'm not a qualified lawyer, but I know my way around a music contract, but it's kind of, it's an interesting one.
I would say I've seen composer contracts come back from studios where there's an option. So where you get your fee and then say, but how much would it cost for you to buy out your writer's share? And you could put a number in. So we are seeing that. And I have to say, 2 years ago, I was finishing up a project for a well-known streamer company. And but that particular streamer, they had to have the writers and the publisher share. And so when we said buyout, we think buyout, but for me, I was like, oh, it's buyout, but you get to keep your writer's share, because nobody would ever take somebody's writer's share. That was not the case. So when the deals, we were moving very fast and the deals hadn't been completed yet, it caused a ripple where one composer left and was like, just for principle, to not want to be on that. But you're going to see it more and more. And I was like, well, how much more money does that particular streamer need where you have to take somebody's writer's share? But that's a different conversation for a different time.
Sorry if I'm... Do you think that's an ownership? Do you think that's a revenue play? Or is that just wanting to have it free and clear?
I think, my opinion is, I think it's a little bit of both. Yeah.
We need to wrap up, but I want to very briefly mention the Guild of Music Supervisors, because the Guild of Music Supervisors is a relatively new company, representative company for you guys, which this panel has been presented in association with, and we're really, really pleased to have it. There are leaflets out in the cafe, in the festival cafe, all around. Please pick one up and have a look. There's a QR code on here for more information, like there would be these days. But would someone like to just tell me a quick bit about the Guild? In the audience is the previous president of it, like the queen of music supervisors, Maggie Rodford, who's up there, and has been very much a part of this panel too, but isn't on the panel, but is there, and here, and has always been is a long-time friend of this festival as well, of course. But who would like to just tell me a little bit about the Guild and why they exist, and why people should, if they're interested in this area of the industry, should get in touch and have a look and explore it? Who'd like to do that?
Do you want to do it? I mean, I was the VP of the Guild in LA, so
there you go. Come on, Tracy.
But you should come in, because I don't know if how we're working. You're working over here and what we did, but we were there. I was there when the Guild started. I was the vice president under John Houlihan. But really, it's a group about advocating for the rights of music supervisors and having a collective force, really forwarding the craft, championing the craft of it. But also, and what we're seeing recently, the Guild was actually going into studios to unionize, starting to realize that better wages. Not to go too far into it, and I don't know what it's like here, but we get a lot of music supervisors get a flat fee. Say you think the project's going to be 3 months, it turns out to be 3 years. You're still making $5,000, and realizing that other people on films, other departments are getting overtime, golden time, and you're on set and you're on a flat fee. So that they're coming in to challenge and champion the craft, but also how important it is, the work that music supervisors do, and to be paid fairly. And I'm just really seeing a lot of that progress since it started, and they're doing incredible work. And I don't know, maybe you want to talk a little bit about how it goes here.
Quickly add to that.
Pretty much what Tracy said. I mean, I think, yes, there is a protection of the craft, which is non-exclusive between the US and the UK. The guys in the US, John and Tracy and everyone, came to us about 7 years ago and said they wanted to set up a UK and European chapter, like biker gangs. And we
is there as much leather in this?
We have
one
a lot of leather in our
good.
patches and all
I
of
needed
that.
to move to the UK.
It's so much cooler. It's so much cooler. But no, again, it is about the craft. But I think one thing that we are trying to actively do right now is also, and I do mean this in the least patronising way I possibly could, is to try and unionise a little bit more in Europe as well. It's something that's very important to us. Our craft is important to us. You've seen the writers' strikes in the States. You see how that thing is affecting the entire business. I think there is a version of that going on with music supervision, as you say. There aren't flat rates. People are treated unfairly. But, in the UK and Europe, we have like 400 members. And you could probably, there's a lot of people out there and they're doing lots of different things. And it's not just film and TV. It's viral, it's online, it's games, it's everything. So it is a really important thing. And I think we are there as a forum and as a receptacle for questions and problems and composer questions. And, we're trying to build. So this is very important
also,
for us.
just one last thing. I just want to say you're absolutely right. And the other thing that the Guild is doing in LA right now, I think is really important to point out, is we're in the middle of a strike. There's no work. People are out of work right now for over 6-7 months. And now they're setting up funds They're setting up grocery lists to also do that outreach to the streamers and the studios and to people to start helping our community to get through this really hard time. And it's wonderful work, and I just wanted to point that out, that they're doing that. It's really awesome.
Well, thank you, all of you. It's been a really fascinating dive into this really interesting world. And thank you for your questions. Thank you also for coming. I think you'll agree that we have 4 very lovely music supervisors who work in lots of different areas here. This is why we're here. We're here at this wonderful industry event because you can meet people and mix with them and talk to them. So talk to them. Here they are. But not in here, crucially, because there is another panel happening very soon with an all-star games composer lineup, which is going to be very exciting. But please find everyone and talk to them. This is your best chance, best opportunity. But thank you so much for coming. It's been a real pleasure. And please say thank you to our wonderful panelists. Thank you.